The front door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality that evening, and the familiar scent of cinnamon candles and simmering pot roast wrapped around me like an old, uncomfortable blanket. I hadn't crossed this threshold in months, not really since the funeral where I'd stood awkwardly at the edges while everyone else hugged and shared stories. Tonight was meant to be simple. Sunday dinner, a little wine, maybe some surface-level talk about work or the weather. Nothing deep. The dining room glowed under warm yellow lamps. Soft acoustic guitar playing low from a speaker on the sideboard. And the table looked picture-perfect with cloth napkins folded just so. Except for one spot. Mine. No plate waiting. No chair pulled out invitingly. No little name card like the others had. I paused in the doorway a beat too long, pretending to adjust my scarf while my eyes scanned the setup. Lydia noticed first. She glided over with that polished smile she reserved for moments when the truth needed polishing too. Her voice light and syrupy. "Audrey, you made it after all. You look refreshed." Mom stayed seated, offering a quick wave from across the table like I was some delivery person at the wrong address. From the kitchen came Derek's laugh, deep and confident, the kind that always filled rooms a little too much. It hadn't always been this way. When Dad was alive, these gatherings buzzed with real energy, grilled steaks outside, terrible dad jokes flying, everyone equal in the chaos. No one schemed. No one measured worth by how loudly they could claim space. Now the whole scene felt choreographed, and I was the uninvited understudy in a play they'd rehearsed without me. I used to be the loud one, the crier, the one raising her hand too eagerly for belonging. But after too many slammed doors and polite dismissals of "we didn't think you'd be interested," I'd learned to lower it. I'd built my own life quietly. Long days as a dental hygienist, moonlighting at event venues cleaning up after weddings, scraping together the down payment on my little suburban house with an FHA loan and sheer stubbornness. No family gifts, no proud announcements. Only Dad had known about it. He'd visited once, standing on the small deck overlooking the backyard garden he'd helped me plant, and said it fit me perfectly, a place where no one could talk over me anymore. He passed away barely a month after I closed on it, and no one in this house had ever asked what I'd been doing since. I slipped out to the backyard for air, the porch light flickering behind me like it, too, was uncertain. Their voices drifted through the cracked kitchen window, Lydia's low and insistent, Derek chuckling low. Then the words landed like cold steel against my spine. "Just slip it in her drink. The house will finally be ours." I froze. Breath caught. Heart hammering. It couldn't be real. A sick joke. Surely. But they weren't joking about me. They were talking about eliminating an obstacle, me. They knew about Dad's house. The one he'd left quietly in my name because I'd been the one who showed up, who listened, who didn't demand. I stepped back inside without a sound, forcing a smile when someone offered me a glass of Cabernet. My hand trembled just slightly on the stem before I steadied it. Dinner unfolded in its usual rhythm, Lydia holding court with stories of her latest promotion, Mom nodding approvingly like a spectator at her favorite show. I laughed on cue, nodded along, all while studying their faces. Lydia kept glancing my way. Was she checking if I'd sipped yet? Or waiting for the first signs? The red wine sat in my glass like a warning. How had they found out? Had Dad mentioned it in passing? Had some paperwork slipped through? And Mom, did she know? My pulse thudded louder than the clink of forks and knives. Awareness settled heavier than fear ever could. Fear reacts. Awareness understands the trap has already closed. I excused myself after dessert, carrying my glass to the kitchen and setting it beside the open bottle. 2 other glasses waited there too. Of course. Lydia breezed in moments later, casual as ever. "Need a refill?" she asked, already pouring into one. I picked up the untouched glass instead, smiling faintly. The whisper replayed in my mind, wrapping tight around my thoughts. But I said nothing. I watched her hands, watched her take a sip first. Only then did I lift mine. If they wanted quiet games, I'd learn to play quieter still. I returned to the table, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to scream what my face refused to. My expression stayed calm, trained by years of being overlooked. They chatted about rising property taxes, new restaurants downtown, whose kid got into what school. I heard little of it. I was cataloging, Lydia's posture too rigid, Derek's eyes scanning the room like he already owned every inch. Lydia raised her glass for a toast. To family, she said sweetly. To family, I echoed softer. Our glasses touched lightly. I barely tasted mine, just enough to blend in, while noting she drank hers fully. Earlier that day, before arriving, I'd done something uncharacteristic. I'd tucked a small hidden camera above the kitchen cabinets. Nestled behind a decorative canister, no one ever moved. Just in case the uneasy feelings weren't paranoia. Lydia had been distracted with appetizers, Derek bragging about his golf league, Mom oblivious unless something was already broken. Trust doesn't shatter overnight. It wears away quietly until you realize you've stopped hoping and started preparing exits. The whisper echoed again. Slip it in her drink. Absurd now. Watching her laugh with Derek, both sipping freely. Yet I'd caught her brief hesitation before drinking, 1 second too long. Calculation flickering across her features. The camera had seen it too. The evening stretched on with undercurrents thicker than the gravy. Lydia joked about people who preferred solitude, eyes flicking to me. Derek added something about real estate being about right timing and the right connections. Mom chimed in that Lydia knew how to make things happen while I'd always been more the dreamer type. It stung not for novelty, but for its casual cruelty. No one batted an eye. Dad used to warn that the biggest smilers at dinner were often the hungriest for what wasn't theirs. After clearing my plate, Lydia followed me to the sink. You've been awfully quiet tonight. Everything all right with, you know, the responsibilities. Her hand landed on my shoulder, not comfort, but a subtle claim. I met her gaze evenly. I'm managing just fine. Thanks. I left shortly after. No goodbyes. Just my coat from the hook and the cool night air. In my car, I pulled up the live feed. There she was on screen, handling both glasses deliberately. I screenshot, backed it up multiple times. Tonight hadn't been dinner. It was the start of watching my back and theirs. They expected silence. I would give them calculation instead. The next morning brought a sharp chill that seeped through my coat as I arrived at the community center for Dad's remembrance service, another event Lydia had organized with her usual flawless efficiency. Candles flickered on every table. A slideshow looped old photos. Dad fishing at the lake. Fixing the fence at the family home. Beaming beside Lydia. None with me. My chair had a hastily handwritten name tag. Hers was printed elegantly. I flipped through the program. Lydia Kane Thompson. Beloved daughter and legacy keeper. My name appeared nowhere, not even a footnote. A woman behind me whispered loudly to her companion. Is she a cousin or something? Pain like this doesn't explode. It seeps in, rotting foundations slowly. I sat through the eulogies with hands clenched. No tears, just the heavy knowledge of erasure. When they unveiled the plaque honoring Dad's memory, Lydia and Derek's names appeared as caretakers of his legacy. Mine was absent. I thought he had 2 daughters, someone muttered nearby. Lydia stepped forward smoothly. We kept it focused on direct family contributions. Direct. The word tasted bitter. Mom caught me as the crowd thinned, pressing a cream folder into my hands. Just sign this. Honey. Makes things easier. You're not really involved anyway. And Lydia has the bandwidth. It was a full transfer of the house ownership, quiet, permanent, legal. I nodded politely, slipped it into my bag. When poison comes in a polite envelope, you don't refuse it outright. You study it. That afternoon I met Sophia at a quiet cafe downtown, the wind biting even under the awning. I slid the folder across. She read silently, then sighed. Washington law has some gray areas on estates. Sign under duress, and it's binding. They might not even need your signature if they push probate right. Family doesn't always betray with knives. She said sometimes they hand you the pen. Back home, I examined Dad's original deed, his handwriting clear. My name prominent. I drafted a decoy transfer document, signed, and mailed it certified to myself as a placeholder. Scans went into a secure folder, proof against their edited history. 3 days later, Mom's voicemail invited me to a quiet Sunday dinner to move forward. Just us. Walking in, the kitchen smelled of vanilla cake with pink icing spelling, "Happy Birthday, Lydia." My birthday, shared since childhood, ignored completely. Lydia smiled from across the room. Fork poised. "You never cared for parties anyway, right?" A neighbor whispered to me. "Is it your birthday too?" "It used to be," I replied quietly, washing my hands at the sink. No one corrected the oversight. The adult table was full. Name cards in elegant script for everyone else. I ended up at the kids' table with paper plates and spilled juice. A little boy asked if I was the babysitter. I ate in silence as conversations flowed over me. Lydia toasted family resilience. Derek's hard work upholding Dad's vision. The next generation never mentioning me. I excused myself early, walking past Dad's old truck still parked under the oak, untouched since the funeral. Halfway home, I picked up a fallen pine cone, grounding myself in something real. At home, I added to my growing archive photos of the cake, the kids' table, the empty adult chair. Dad's letter from Sophia, found in an attic box, sat on the table. "I left the house to you because you understood its meaning, because you stayed without asking for more." I scanned it, backed it up. They wanted me deleted. I'd preserve every truth they tried to overwrite. The county clerk's office smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent hum. I waited with Dad's original will clutched tight, finally reaching the counter to request the latest filing. The clerk returned with a folder. My name was gone. Lydia listed as sole heir and executor. They'd redrafted everything, erasing me like I'd never existed. I requested copies, then drove home in silence, touching the porch post Dad had carved himself upon arrival. Memories flooded, summer fence painting where he'd said a good mess meant giving your all. Sophia arrived later with a box from Mom's attic containing Dad's sealed letter. His words hit deep. Apologies for letting Lydia overshadow. Confirmation the house was mine, because I'd earned it quietly. That night I photographed every detail of the house, the tile we'd laid, the brass fixtures, dents from years of life, and started a detailed timeline of erasures, altered will, missing plaque, ignored birthday. The bank call came unexpectedly. A loan officer mentioned a past-due personal loan for $40,000 I'd supposedly co-signed with Lydia last year. The signature looked close but forged. They claimed I'd agreed over the phone, trusting her. At the bank, I requested notarized copies, smiling calmly despite the rage simmering low. Dad's advice echoed, "Don't get loud. Let them walk into their own trap." Confronting Mom in her foyer, I showed the paperwork. "Did you know?" She blinked, claiming it was temporary, that I was distant and hard to reach. "You didn't ask," I said simply, leaving the papers behind. Back home, Dad's letter reminded me this fight was about reclaiming space they'd taken without permission. A mistaken text from Lydia arrived early one morning. "She'll be out soon." Everything's almost ours. Sent to me instead of Derek. Proof. I screenshot everything, added context notes, timestamps. They were escalating. So was my preparation. At the community center event celebrating Dad's volunteer legacy, I arrived early. Lydia worked the room like she owned it. Derek whispered that estate matters were smoothing out. Sophia slipped me a flash drive discreetly. Midway, the coordinator announced time for one more speaker. I stepped to the podium, folder in hand. Thank you for honoring my father, I began. I read excerpts from his letter. You understood what this home means. The room hushed. Then the video played, hidden camera footage of Lydia in my kitchen swapping glasses deliberately. Derek handling both with suspicious care. Gasps rippled. Another clip showed Lydia rifling through my safe, removing documents. This is how legacies are stolen, I said. This is rewriting stories while the ink is wet. Lydia stood, protesting it was out of context. I held up more evidence. Forged loan papers, the altered will copy, the mistaken text. My silence was endurance, not consent. Mom whispered to Lydia in disbelief. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. I offered copies to the archive and walked out amid whispers. No applause, just the weight of truth settling. A week later, the calls had stopped. Lydia and Derek went quiet online. Mom kept distance. At a neighborhood potluck, someone mistook me for the housekeeper again. But it no longer cut deep. I hung Dad's photo above the mantel and tacked his handkerchief nearby. Mom visited days later, saying I'd embarrass Lydia, that forgiveness mattered. Only if asked, I replied. She left without embrace. I opened a new file, unedited, a daughter's inheritance. Memories, records, letters, preserved clearly. Dad built the house. I'd rebuilt its meaning. In the quiet evenings now, I sit on the deck he helped plant, wondering how far family will go to claim what isn't theirs, and whether truth spoken once can ever truly be silenced again. The house stands solid, mine by right and resilience, but the echo lingers in every family. Who really decides the story we leave behind?